Again, it's been a few days and I'm continuing some corrections that I'm seeing in my painting. I immediately am noting the difference between my two shadows here. So I think I'm gonna bring this shadow up significantly in value, and I'm gonna bring this shadow down in value. Maybe your paint is still a little bit wet. Again, I'm trying to just get the table done in such a way that it feels like it's a little bit lighter, a little bit airier than what we had it before. I am not trying necessarily to get a full coverage of this because I actually do like these little bits of the paint that I had underneath it. So I'm gonna take some of my cobalt blue straight from the tube, mixed a little bit over my gray mix. Now it is considerably darker than my orange, so I think I'm gonna take some of this this white that I have here, add just a little bit of that. So let's kind of test this and see what this looks like. I think about now is good for me to start tapering in. I set myself a landmark, it's above this. So I think I'm still gonna come up just a little bit more. And this is a little bit of a difficult point because I know that I want to taper my vase down a little bit more before I start bringing it over. And I have wet paint. I just put this gray down, so there's not really a lot for me to do here other than maybe lay the bottom. The thing about wet on wet is that you need to be cautious with the level of pressure that you're applying. We are going to spend some time working on the other side of this vase, trying to keep it as symmetrical as possible. Suddenly it came to me that I love this idea of using the background color as the same color as the vase, and then doing some amount of drawing my lines on this vase. So I'm gonna make a color that is very, very close to our background color, because we also have some shadows that will need to sort of sit over the top of this, which also imply the form of this vase. I think when you get ideas like that in painting, you should lean into them. Pretty close here. Almost this subliminal vase. We really can barely see a difference. I have to be careful again because I just added a bunch of paint over on this side. And I know that if I do wet on wet, I'm gonna make this blue a lot more of a gray, and I don't really wanna do that. I'm also really not using my reference all that much, and I think there's no harm in trying to prioritize the reference. I certainly prefer at this point to just let my body and my brain lead. I'm gonna have ideas that would not come from the fact that I'm staring at my reference. I'm being deliberate about recognizing that my painting is my own and I have all of the agency in the world to do whatever I want with it. It doesn't really matter that it looks like the reference to me. I would rather focus on the enjoyment of the act of painting itself. So there is a slight perceptible difference, maybe not on camera, between this color and this color. And I've added forms in, so I have some guidelines for my texture. I'm gonna come back over that in due time and either do some drawing or do some more textured passes with more paint. But for now, I'm just gonna let that sit. And all I'm gonna do is try to get some amount of that color on here so that I can take a minute, look at it, establish if it's in the right place, if my proportions are reasonable, and if I need to make any other major corrections before I start adding some like dark lines or any other details. I'm gonna take my red here. Again, I know that I want it to be fairly light. I know that it's not quite as light as my vase, so I need to double check that this is not too close in value to my orange, which it's certainly, to me, that's about right. It's not as light as this. It's not as dark as either of these. So I think I'm gonna roll with that. We've pretty much marked in where the top of our vase is, and then we know that we have a flower that sits with a little bit of room above that. In some capacity, the layering does matter. We do want to be fairly confident that we've done the right thing and we've put ourselves in a place where we're not gonna have to go back over our shadow or back over the vase. I'm not stressed about if I get something wrong here. The important thing to understand about why I'm doing this lily first is that it is more about establishing a location and a landmark, because this lily, after all, is something that I'm going to end up painting on last. And in order to say, yeah, it's the thing that's closest to the viewer, it helps to always paint that last. Still, In establishing where this lily is, I have a lot easier of a time doing the things that sort of sit between the background and the thing that's closest to us, the foreground, because I can paint all of my leaves in here. I can paint maybe some other closed lilies that sit behind it. I can do all of this interesting stuff informed by the location of where I've put this lily. I know that we have a stem, and the stem would come all the way over here, and then eventually we've got the top of our lily. And that's all that I want for that. It's just a little white block. And in doing that, we can figure out what we might have done wrong, if anything. So kind of in this middle third, really we've got some bits that are like, there's one here, maybe another one here. So I'm gonna actually block that like right here. We're gonna say that's where this one is. The lily that sits over to the right of the vase. And that one I'm pretty well established that it's here. I'm not super stressed about it. These should be connecting with this is a little bit iffy to me. I'm taking note of what I've done incorrectly here. And the main thing that I'm seeing is the fact that this comes up to about here. It maybe is a little bit lower. This lily should really, I actually mismarked that. It should come over to just to the left of it. It still points in the general direction of the vase. I've made things stretched out a little bit too far. And that is just due to the fact that I think I shifted my entire composition down, which happens if you don't spend that much time on your drawing, honestly. I'm gonna actually just say that this beginning of this lily is about here, trending in the right path for my composition. And then we've got maybe one more line that sits like that. The essence of what I've done here is that I've given myself some landmarks to work with that are not too harsh, they're not too permanent. And I can always scrape over this paint. I'm just gonna remove this paint. I can come back over it with my background color. Now that I've at least established where my landmarks are. I have the top of the vase. I have the lily that sits roughly between the 2/3. I have this lily, which is a nice feature to pull our eye to the right. We're gonna add some interesting bits into that. And then we've got this final lily that maybe brings us full circle with this shadow. So the next pass that we're gonna do, we're gonna cover over the spots that we made mistakes. We're going to finalize our background color because we still haven't added that blue in here even. And we're going to make some trim along our shadow, just generally fixing some edges.